Welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking time to join us today for this webinar in regards to public benefits. The One Degree team is happy that the Bay Area Legal Aid team is joining us today to bring the community important information about public benefits. My name is Kamaria. I am the peer navigator here in the San Francisco Bay Area with One Degree, and I will be hosting this webinar with all of you all today. I will get started on some introductions. From the One Degree team today, we are joined by my wonderful manager, Sean Snabley. They are in charge of the Community Navigator program here in the Bay Area. And we also have the lovely Cecilia Menha, and she is down in SoCal today. She is part of the Community Navigator team in Los Angeles. We were supposed to be joined by Emma today, but she has taken the night off, which she needs. But we all bring a great team of with adequate knowledge of the community. They will be behind the scenes today, putting up with the technical things for our webinar and reviewing the questions that you all post today on YouTube or within our chat app. Now I will introduce our marvelous legal aid team. We have Jessica Mark, who is the supervising attorney at Bay Area Legal Aid. She works in the Alameda County Regional Office, which is located in Oakland. And she assists people primarily with CalWorks, CalFresh, and general assistance. So thank you for being here today, Jessica. And we also have Kelsey, who is the staff attorney for the legal aid line at Bay Area Legal Aid, She has substantial experience in eviction defense, debt collection defense, and she also has knowledge in health insurance grievances and complaints. So thank you, Kelsey, for being with us as well. Like I said, many thanks for both of you all for taking time to explain the details about Medi-Cal and CalFresh, such as the eligibility and what to do if an application is unfortunately denied, and just all things we need to be successful in this process. During the webinar today, you're able to submit questions to our panelists in two different ways. You will have the option to submit questions through a YouTube live chat that is available. You can send your questions there. We also have an app called Padlet, in which you can submit your questions, and that information is right there up on the screen. The website is written on the screen, and Cecilia and Sean will be assisting with that. Today, Jessica and Kelsey will present information about their organization, talk about eligibility, and what the steps you need to take if your application is denied for Medi-Cal and or CalFresh. They will also talk about how to access the benefits provided by your organization. Then I will take a few minutes to talk about the resources provided by my organization, One Degree, which we have a feature called the Common App. The Common App is where you can complete both of these applications in one place. So I will get to that once they're done presenting, and we will end with any last minute questions or any information that you needed that was not presented during the slide. And that's all I have right now. I'm going to sit back and let Jessica and Kelsey have the floor. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Well, I am Kelsey, and I am a staff attorney at Bay Area Legal Aid, and I am going to talk to you all today about how to access free healthcare in California through Medi-Cal. And so, Sean, you can move on to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. So first, Bay Area Legal Aid, where Jessica and I both work, is a nonprofit law firm, and we provide free legal services to residents of the San Francisco Bay Area. And we have many practice areas, including health law, like we're going to go over today, consumer, housing, public benefits, youth law, reentry, and family law. Next slide, please. And so specifically about healthcare and Medi-Cal, we have our Health Consumer Center unit. And the Health Consumer Center is part of the California-wide Health Consumer Alliance. And this is a program where there are free attorneys to talk to any healthcare consumer in all of California. And so we cover 7 counties in the Bay Area. And if you have any questions about your healthcare, whether it's Medi-Cal or private insurance or any healthcare question, you can give us a call and we can talk to you about that. And all of our services are free and there are no income or asset questions or requirements. Anyone from the community can give us a call. And we'll either just give you a one-time phone call consultation, or in some cases we offer extended representation. And we have attorneys who speak multiple languages, and we also use an interpretation service so you can access our services. Next slide, please. Oh, the slide is small, but that's okay. This slide talks about our practice areas. So what we're talking about today is Medi-Cal and Denti-Cal. And I would say that is the majority of our practice. About 50% of our calls are Medi-Cal and Denti-Cal calls. That includes things like in-home supportive services and accessing care. And then we also deal with private insurance, managed care, medical debt, and Medicare, and things like that. And while Sean is working on the slides, I'll just keep going. So we're just going to talk about Medi-Cal today. So what is Medi-Cal? It is a federal and state funded health insurance program for low-income folks in California. And the eligibility for this program is either determined by your county social services agency or by the Federal Social Security Administration if you receive benefits like SSI. And so this program is known federally. So across the US, it's known as Medicaid, but California has just decided to rename it Medi-Cal. So if you hear the terms Medicaid or Medi-Cal, Medi-Cal is just the name for the Medicaid program in California. And there are a wide variety of people who qualify for Medi-Cal. So let me see, I think you can move on to the next slide now here. So there is program linked, like if you have SSI or CalWORKs, you will automatically qualify for Medi-Cal. If you're a senior and low income, recently there was an expansion of Medi-Cal. So even if you're not a senior and low income, you can still qualify for Medi-Cal. And there are lots of different programs that get different types of people linked up with healthcare through Medi-Cal. And the only requirement that is kind of the same in all of them is that the applicant needs to be a California resident or have an intent to reside in California. So you can move on to the next slide. Okay, and a question a lot of people have all the time is, well, I'm an immigrant, so I don't qualify for Medi-Cal, and that is not always true. There are programs where folks can qualify for Medi-Cal even if they are an immigrant, and so anyone who's a lawful permanent resident, a refugee or asylum seeker, victims of human trafficking, and children up to the age of 26, and there are other types of qualified immigrants as well. Those folks can receive full scope, full coverage Medi-Cal. And then for those who do not have qualifying immigration status, which includes those lawfully present but not qualified, or those who are undocumented, they can still receive some services with what's called restricted scope Medi-Cal. And that covers pregnancy and emergency services. And then there's also the PRU-Call rule, or permanently residing under color of law, which is an immigration status where immigration authorities know you're here and they just are not intending to begin deportation proceedings against you. And so, for example, DACA recipients qualify for full scope Medi-Cal under this PRU-Call rule. And an important thing to note that President Biden changed on March 15, 2021, is that Medi-Cal is no longer considered in the public charge inadmissibility test for immigration. And so you don't have to worry about Medi-Cal impacting your immigration status anymore. Next slide, please. Thank you. So there are various types of Medi-Cal coverage, and the one that most people have is free full scope Medi-Cal. And this means that you have no cost sharing, no responsibility to pay for services, and Medi-Cal pays for all medically necessary healthcare and treatment, and the recipient pays nothing. Another type of Medi-Cal is with a share of cost, and this is for folks whose income is too high for free full scope Medi-Cal, but they are still under the asset limit, which is $2,000 for an individual or $3,000 for a married couple. And so in this case, with a share of cost, every month a recipient has a share of cost they need to meet in order for Medi-Cal to start paying. So for example, if your share of cost is $500 a month, then that's what you would need to pay for your health coverage. And then as soon as you paid that amount in health coverage costs, Medi-Cal would pick up the rest of the bill. And then restricted scope Medi-Cal, like we talked about before, is for folks who don't have a qualified immigration status. Emergency pregnancy related services are covered for them. Next slide, please. Okay, so like I alluded to earlier, there was a recent expansion of Medi-Cal where it used to only cover folks who were disabled or elderly or had children, so like very small scope of Medi-Cal, and the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, created a new category of eligibility, and it's commonly known as expansion Medi-Cal. And this has greatly increased access to Medi-Cal, which has been really incredible for the community. And so this program is only based on a recipient's modified adjusted gross income, or commonly referred to as MAGI. And so MAGI is based on the US tax code, and eligibility is only based on income. So any resources or assets just are not counted, and your eligibility is purely based on if your income level is under the cap. And so for most people, it's 138% of the federal poverty limit, which is set by the government every year, the federal poverty limit. And so there are a few different programs that use this calculation. And so you can see there's the 138 MAGI Medi-Cal expansion, programs for children that have a little bit of a higher income level, programs for pregnant women that also have a higher income level. So those are available under this new Medi-Cal expansion. Next slide, please. And then we have the traditional, or the pre-Affordable Care Act, or pre-Obamacare Medi-Cal, and that's commonly known as traditional Medi-Cal. And these programs have income and asset limits. And so the asset limit for these programs is $2,000 per month for an individual and $3,000 a month for a couple. And there are a few different rules about what is counted. So if you live in a home that you own, that is not counted towards this asset limit. But if you had a second home, that would be counted towards this asset limit. And then if you own a car, or if you're in a couple and both of you own cars for your transportation, those are not counted. But if you had a lot of cars, you like cars, those would be counted towards this asset limit. So that could make you ineligible for traditional Medi-Cal programs. And so these programs are typically for folks who are elderly or disabled. And so if you are over 65, or if you are under 65 and have Medicare, that is when you would be put into a traditional Medi-Cal program, and where you have that asset limit, and not in the Magi Medi-Cal where you don't have that asset limit. And folks are working on trying to get those asset limits increased, because they were set many years ago, and we all know that $2,000 is really not enough to have in your bank account. So people are working on getting those increased. So hopefully we'll see a change to that soon. And then the last program here is the 250% Working Disabled program. And this is a program for people with a disability who also work, and their income is so high that they would have a share of cost, and they wouldn't be on full coverage Medi-Cal. And so it's a program just to know about and ask the county about. If you are receiving any sort of disability income under this program, your disability income would not be counted towards your total income, which could get you under the income limit and have you qualify for Medi-Cal. Next slide, please. Thank you. So these are some of the Medi-Cal income limits in actual numbers. So the first one is the Expansion Adult Program. This is a Magi program, so there is no asset limit. So as long as an individual's income is under 138% of the federal poverty limit, which in 2021 is $1,482 per month, you would qualify for Medi-Cal. And these income limits increase every year to, be on track with inflation and just keep up with the times. And the way that these, your income can be calculated is it can either be calculated annually or it can be calculated monthly. And the county is required to pick whichever calculation is most beneficial to you. So, if you worked a lot and had a high-paying job, and then you became unable to work, or you lost your job, in that month where you start to have zero income, you would qualify. Even if you had made a salary that annually is a lot higher than the annual income limit, once your income goes to zero in a month, that you would still be able to qualify for Medi-Cal, because the county would be required to look at only that month, because that is the most favorable way to look at it for you. So that's something to keep in mind. If you lose your job, lose your health coverage, don't have money, definitely can apply for Medi-Cal right away, because your income has dropped to zero. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so that's just it. You for example, lost your job, or you lost your health coverage and you need to apply for Medi-Cal. How do you do that? So there are many ways you can apply for Medi-Cal. You can apply in person at your local social services office. However, many offices are still closed right now due to the pandemic. And so there are a few ways you can apply online. One is through Covered California, which is another health insurance program in California that coordinates with Medi-Cal on these applications. And so you can just apply at coveredca.com. And then there's also the One Degree Common app that you can use to apply for benefits as well. And then you also can call, or you can even call your county office and request that they mail something to you if you need something in writing, or just apply over the phone. And then as for timeline, applications should be processed within 45 days. And your county office may contact you if they need further information, but if your application had everything that they need to show that you're eligible, they will just approve you without contacting you. But if it's been longer than 45 days since you applied, you should contact your county directly and see if you can say, hey, I applied, what's the status? And some counties are harder to get in touch with than others. And so if you can't get in touch with your county, you can request a state fair hearing because of the delay, and that usually speeds up the application process. And then once you're approved, you will pick a managed care plan. And every county in California has a different managed care plan, like Anthem Blue Cross or Alameda Alliance for Health or LA Care. And some counties have multiple options for you to choose from, and you'll be asked to pick one unless you qualify for an exemption. For example, if you have Medicare, you're not required to pick a managed care plan, but most people are. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and so there are some special rules right now about or during the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the most important rules, and one that's been really impactful for people, is that there is a prohibition on negative actions until the federal health emergency order is lifted. And so a negative action would be something like canceling Medi-Cal benefits or changing Medi-Cal benefits to where someone would have to pay something where before they had free Medi-Cal, like moving someone to a share of cost. And this is even if your income increases, even if you no longer meet the requirements for the program during the public health emergency, Medi-Cal benefits cannot be canceled. And so if your Medi-Cal benefits have been canceled during the pandemic, definitely reach out to us or the Health Consumer Alliance and we can talk to you about that. And so there are exceptions. Death, moving out of state, you can request to be removed from Medi-Cal, or if you transition to long-term care. And this only applies to people who are already enrolled in Medi-Cal. So if you're applying for the first time now, you can be denied if you don't meet the criteria, but once you are enrolled, then this protection would apply to you. And some other protections are the appeal deadline for state fair hearings has been extended. Decisions made by the county have been extended from 90 days to 210 days, and decisions made by managed care plans were previously 120 days, now they're 240 days. So you may still have time if a decision was made and you want to appeal, you just have more time now to get in touch with an attorney or enact your appeal rights. And there are also premium exemptions right now. So if you are on a Medi-Cal program where you pay a premium, like the Working Disabled program, you can request a waiver of your payments. And you have to request it. They won't do it automatically, but they will apply the request retroactively back to March 2020. So if you have paid any premiums on these programs and you didn't know about this, you can make that request and the county can get you some money back. All right, next slide, please. Okay, and just a couple other COVID-19 protections. There is a new group that was created, the COVID-19 Uninsured group, and this is for anyone who's not eligible for other Medi-Cal programs and is either uninsured or has Medi-Cal with a share of cost or has private insurance that does not provide free COVID-19 related tests and treatments. And so under this program, you can qualify for free COVID-19 testing, any testing related services and treatment services. This includes related visits to the office, like if you had to go to the emergency room, that would be included. And so you would have to go to a Medi-Cal qualified provider in order to participate in this program. And so you can look up the COVID uninsured group online and see if you can find a COVID or a qualified provider in your area. And then COVID-related treatment is free for full scope Medi-Cal beneficiaries. And then one last protection is that any stimulus checks or supplemental pandemic unemployment benefits do not count toward Medi-Cal eligibility. So that extra money that we have been getting won't count against you in an application. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so now we're to talking about your appeal rights. So this is when either your health plan or the county makes a decision that you disagree with. There are things you can do to challenge that decision and make an appeal. And so first, we're going to talk about the managed care plan making a decision that you disagree with. And so this is something like, so your managed care plan, again, is something like Kaiser or Anthem Blue Cross or Alameda Alliance for Health. Those are the organizations that help run the Medi-Cal program, and they are called managed care plans. And so when they make a decision you disagree with, it's usually something like they decide that they won't cover a surgery for you, or they're making kind of like a determination of what health coverage they will or will not cover. And it will be a decision made by the managed care plan. And they're required to send you a notice. And so you will get a piece of paper that explains who's making the decision and why they're making that decision. And so if it's a managed care plan that made a decision you disagree with, the first step is to file an internal appeal with the plan. And you have 60 days from the date of the adverse benefit determination to file the appeal with the managed care plan directly. So you can call them, or sometimes they have ways to file grievances online. And the plan then has 30 days to respond to you in writing with their response to your appeal, whether they agree with you or whether they disagree with you and why. And if you disagree with their response after the 30 days, or if they don't send you a response within 30 days, you can request a state fair hearing or file a complaint with the Department of Managed Healthcare. And you can do both at the same time. However, getting a decision through a state fair hearing takes precedent over a Department of Managed Healthcare complaint. So you would just want to make sure and maybe try to do the Department of Managed Healthcare complaint before going to the state fair hearing, just so you have all of those appeal options available. Not every managed care plan is covered by the Department of Managed Healthcare, but a lot of them are. And there are just these appeal deadlines to be aware of. So you can request a state fair hearing within 240 days from the day of the plan's appeal decision. And you can you can file a complaint with the Department of Managed Healthcare within 120 or 180 days from the plan's decision. So just be aware of those appeal deadlines when you're appealing these decisions. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's managed care plan appeals. But what happens when the state or the county decides something you disagree with? These decisions would usually be something like the county decides you don't qualify for Medi-Cal at all, the county terminates your Medi-Cal coverage, or the county moves you from free Medi-Cal to Medi-Cal with a share of cost. And you would, if that happens, the county is required to send you a notice in writing. And so it would say on there that it was from the county. And so the way that you can appeal these decisions is just to request a state fair hearing with the California Department of Social Services. And right now, the deadline to do that is 210 days from the date of the denial or the decision. And one thing to note here is that you can request aid paid pending. And this is available for people who were on Medi-Cal and then they were terminated. As long as you request a state fair hearing before the county action goes into effect, your Medi-Cal benefits will continue as is until you receive a final state fair hearing decision. So if you received a notice today, for example, on September 23rd, that your benefits were terminating on October 1st, as long as you call or file your request for a state fair hearing before October 1st, you would still be able to receive your Medi-Cal benefits while that appeal was pending and while you were waiting for your hearing date. And so that's a really good benefit to remember about appeal deadlines. Next slide, please. And so I know that talking about all these appeal deadlines can seem really overwhelming. And so we are here to help. And if you live in the Bay Area, you can call Bay Area Legal Aid's Health Consumer Center directly. And if you live anywhere else in California, or if you're not sure if you're quite in one of our Bay Area counties, you can just call the Health Consumer Alliance directly at healthconsumer.org, and they will get you connected with the legal aid organization that can help you in your county. So that is everything. And I'm just wondering if there are any questions.
I don't have any questions in the live chat, but it seems folks are we have a wonderful positive review that they're thankful that you're here and that they'll be reaching out to you soon.
Amazing. Well, we're excited for them to reach out. So thank you so much.
Sorry, I forgot I was on mute. Well, thank you. Yes, we're gonna transition over to Jessica.
Hi, just finding my PowerPoint. There it is. Okay. So hi, everyone. Like Maria said, my name is Jessica Mark. I'm also an attorney at Bay Area Legal Aid, and I'm going to review CalFresh with you all. So CalFresh is a nutrition program that provides monthly food benefits to households. Those benefits are issued on an EBT card, and it can be used as a credit card at places like grocery stores, farmers markets, and some online retailers. CalFresh is not a cash benefit, and there are limits on how those benefits can be used. So you can use your CalFresh to buy food, seeds, or plants to grow food. You can't use it on non-food items like cigarettes, diapers, toilet paper. Those household paper products are a big one that people try to use. You can't use it on medications. And you also can't use it on hot foods or foods that are meant to be eaten in the store unless you're participating in the restaurant meals program, which I'll discuss a little more later. CalFresh is given to households, and in CalFresh, a household is a group of people who live together and regularly purchase and prepare food together. A household doesn't have to be people who are actually related. You can have multiple households under one roof, and the opposite can also be true, where you have one household with several different members of people of different families. Excuse me. There are certain mandatory household members. So spouses who live together have to be in the same household, whether or not they purchase and prepare their food together. And children under age 22 who live with their parents also have to be in the same household with their parents. That can be difficult. In particular, you can have someone who a lot of times we see people who, they are out of high school now, 20, 21, 22, they're working, they may or may not be paying rent, but usually they're living more or less independently. They buy their own food a lot of times. They may not eat with their family. Even if they're living in the home, they have to be part of the family. That can be difficult because that means their income has to be reported. Changes in their income have to be reported. There is no way around that. Under age 22 have to be part of the household. There are certain immigrants that can qualify for CalFresh. I have a list here. It's not an exhaustive list. Generally, LPRs, refugees, asylees, parolees, people applying for U or T visa or for citizenship under VAWA. People who are ineligible are going to be people who are undocumented, and people on DACA recipients are actually ineligible for CalFresh too. If you have a mixed status household where there are some people who qualify and some who don't, the household can still apply for CalFresh. The way that works is that the ineligible household member would just need to specify they're not applying for the benefit. Their income has to still be provided, and it would still be counted towards the house in a not completely, but part of it would be, but they aren't required to give immigration status, and they should never give a fake social security number or false information, because that can be considered fraud and is a problem for other reasons. There are also special rules throughout the program for households with at least one member who is elderly or disabled. In CalFresh, elderly is considered 60 years or older. Disabled is someone who's receiving a disability-based benefit with a test as stringent as a Social Security disability test. If someone's receiving VA benefits, that's going to be a total disability or needs aid in attendance. Both total disability and needs aid in attendance are actually specific terms within VA benefits. So if you're wondering if that's what you have, but those aren't the words that they use, then no, you wouldn't qualify as disabled under CalFresh, though you could still qualify for the benefits. For a long time, people on SSI were not eligible for CalFresh. That changed back in 2019, but before that, it was about 40 years where people were ineligible. So a lot of people haven't heard that message. So we still like to pass that out anytime we talk about CalFresh. If you're on SSI, you qualify for benefits, you should go apply and get start getting those food stamps. College students are generally not eligible, but there are a lot of exceptions to this rule. If you're employed for at least 20 hours per week, if you're on a work study program and you anticipate working during the school year, you qualify even if you don't actually start work, as long as you don't refuse a job. And actually during the pandemic, even that has its own exception, which I'll talk about a little later. People with children in certain situations, people on CalWorks, there's a lot on here. The state guidance I cited down here is ACEN I-8915. I actually probably didn't need to include that for this audience. I would say if you have a problem with this, you should contact us. If you're in the Bay Area, you can contact your local legal aid, and we can help you sort through whether or not you really, as a college student, whether or not you should be getting CalFresh or not. Okay, so that's all on who is eligible for CalFresh. The next session, we kind of go over financial eligibility. So when it comes to CalFresh, there's 2 income tests. And so first we need to sort through what is income. In order to be considered income, money must be actually available or reasonably anticipated. Reasonably anticipated means you know the date and the amount of money that's going to be received. If you just started a new job and you know approximately like when payday is, for instance, but you don't know how much your check is going to be, then that money wouldn't be counted until you actually start receiving it. On the flip side, if you get paid every 2 weeks and you have a set payment, then your income is reasonably anticipated. We know what you're going to get if your income doesn't fluctuate very much. Certain things are just not considered income. There's an idea in benefits called in-kind income. In CalFresh, that means free housing. That's not considered income. If you're a former foster youth and you're receiving THP plus, that's not considered income for CalFresh. Earned income of a student, a $50 CalWorks child support pass-through, non-recurring lump sum payments. There's a lot of things here that as many people receive, but isn't considered income for CalFresh purposes. Once you figure out what someone's income is, like I said, there's going to be 2 income tests. The first one is the gross income test, and you're going to take their income and apply it to 200% of the FPL, which until October 1st at least, these are the numbers here. We haven't gotten the new numbers yet, so I couldn't update my PowerPoint for you all. But this is the highest income test. And so the first step in assessing eligibility would be determining if you fit here. If there's an elderly or disabled member in the household, they don't have to meet this income test. They would go to the next test. Assuming someone satisfies this test or they're not subject to it, you would then make a bunch of deductions. And this part here is what makes it really hard to determine whether or not someone qualifies for CalFresh, and if they do, the dollar amount that they qualify for. other programs, it's much easier to just, I can make a guess based on how much other income you have. For a lot of programs, whether or not you'd qualify, and for CalFresh, that's just not possible. I listed a couple of deductions here. I won't go over them because they are actually quite complicated. Most people who do this work have like an Excel spreadsheet or some other way of calculating this electronically. So it's not done by hand. But some things to point out: if you do have an elderly or disabled member of the household, then that person should include their medical expenses. If they have any unreimbursed medical expenses, that means anything they're paying out of pocket that their insurance isn't going to pay them for. As long as they have more than $35 in a month, they can report that, and that can be used to reduce their income. There's also deductions for your housing, for your utilities. If you pay for dependent care, so if you have a young child or an adult who needs to be cared after in order for you to work, those expenses can also be used for your CalFresh. Once you apply all those deductions, you would apply their income, the resulting income, to the net income test. Those limits again are here. And this would tell you whether or not the household qualifies for CalFresh. CalFresh technically does have a resource limit. Resources are property that you own, cash that's in your bank account, things outside of income that you might have. Most households are actually not subject to the resource limit. There's an exception. There's actually a couple exceptions, but the main one is for households who have at least one elderly or disabled member with a gross income over that gross income test. So if you have a household who didn't have to go through that first income test that we talked about, because they're over that limit, but they were able to satisfy the net income once you calculated in their housing and their medical expenses and everything else, then you need to make sure they meet the resource test. There are some resources that are exempt or excluded. Honestly, I don't go into a lot of detail because the vast majority of people are not subject to this, so it doesn't come up very often. And here's the maximum monthly allotment for people. Once you get approved, this is what you can get. You have a question, Sean?
Yes, someone is asking what the age for seniors is in California. Is it 60 or is it 65?
60. So for the CalFresh program, in order to be considered elderly, I think is the way they use it, it's a 60 years old. In order to be considered disabled, you have to be receiving Social Security or a similar, a test with a similar disability standard. Okay, so here's, like I said, this is the maximum grant that people can get. Again, it's actually going up on the 1st, but we haven't gotten those new numbers yet, so I don't know what it's going up to. But now I'll talk a little bit about how to apply for CalFresh. So applications can be filed in person at your local county welfare department. You can file by phone in some counties, not all counties, and unfortunately I don't have a list. And you can also apply online at getcalfresh.org or through your county website. The county website, well, it's a little bit in flux right now because there's a new one coming out for some counties, but most people are on CalWIN in CalWIN counties. If you've heard of My Benefits CalWIN, you can apply for CalFresh there. But getcalfresh.org is a really fast and easy way. Once your application is filed, county staff should contact you for an interview. This is generally done over the phone. That was true even before the pandemic, and so of course it continues to be true now. But if for some reason you need to meet in person, you should let your county know. And claimants also have to submit all required verifications. And I have a list here of certain verifications they may ask for: your income, your social security number, though they don't necessarily need the card, where you live. If you're unhoused, you don't need to list a specific address. Your identity, so ID, proof of your immigration, medical expenses, there's a whole list here. If you don't have a certain verification that they're asking you for, you can use what's called collateral contacts. And basically that means that the county uses some sort of third-party source in order to verify whatever information it is. The biggest example that I usually hear is if you need to verify either your address or like the amount that you pay for rent, then if you don't have a copy of your lease agreement, what they could do is contact your landlord and get that information from there. There's also Oh, I took out that slide since we're kind of abbreviated, but if you have someone who's unhoused, for instance, it can be hard for people to keep their documents. Another thing that can be done is your identity. If you don't have ID, you could have your identity verified by social service workers that you're working with. So a caseworker, a case manager through a nonprofit, for instance, could verify your identity for CalFresh purposes if needed. On timelines, your regular application should be processed within 30 days. If you qualify for expedited service, that should be processed within 3 calendar days. That would include if you file on a weekend. If you file on Friday, then it should still be processed by Monday or Tuesday. In order to qualify for expedited service, you need to meet one of the 3 requirements. So either you have less than $150 in gross monthly income and less than $100 in liquid resources, destitute migrant workers, or the one that most people qualify for, especially in the larger counties with higher cost of living, the household where your gross income and resources are less than your monthly rent plus mortgage and utilities, rent or mortgage plus utilities. If you meet one of those exceptions, your application should be processed within 3 days, and you can get your card issued in person if you want. So you would actually get your card almost immediately. No matter how long it took to approve your application, if it's approved, your benefits would be issued back to the date of the application. Oh, I do have it here. So some like general rules that apply more to unhoused applicants and recipients. They apply to anyone, but usually it's people who are unhoused who end up needing to use these more. There is no requirement to report an address, but you have to apply in the county where you live. You can use CalFresh at soup kitchens and farmers markets. And there's the restaurant meals program, which would allow you to use your CalFresh to purchase meals that are already made, hot foods. You have to be either unhoused, elderly, or disabled to qualify. And like I said, your county had to participate in the program in order to qualify. Very recently, I think starting October 1st again, the state is taking over that program. And so all counties will be participating. Timeline for that is actually kind of unclear to me. But soon you'll be able to use your benefits for the restaurant meals program in any county throughout the state. And ideally, that would also mean that more restaurants are participating. Because you have some counties like LA where there's a lot of places that are participating and a lot of places where you can go to use your card to buy food. There's a lot of fast food places like Carl's Jr. is a big one that participates, Subway, things like that. But and for instance, now I'm in Alameda County. They don't use it. There just aren't as many restaurants participating. Ideally, that will change now that the state has taken over. And then, like I said, you can verify identity through collateral sources. So how do you keep your benefits once you're on? CalFresh households are certified. So that means benefits are approved for a specific amount of time, and you have to reapply for your benefits and to continue. Most households are certified for 12 months with the SAR 7 due at 6 months, but that certification can be longer for households with elderly or disabled members, 24 or 36 months, depending on their situation. There are mandatory reports that have to be made in the middle of the period. That's the responsibility of the household. And once your reports are made, your benefits are frozen and can only be changed in certain circumstances. So there are mandatory reports that have to be made outside of your SAR 7 or your recertification, which again, for most people is going to be every 6 months. You'll either do a SAR 7 or a recertification. If your income goes above your income reporting threshold, which is 130% of the federal poverty limit for most households, you'll get a notice that tells you that dollar amount. You have to report that outside whenever it happens. And then if you're subject to the work rules and your work drops below 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month, you have to report that too. Right now, the work requirements are suspended statewide, so you don't have to worry about that. You should note, though, other cash programs like CalWorks and GA have more mandatory reports that are due, and so you should make sure that you're complying with all of your reporting responsibilities so that you don't jeopardize other programs you're on. And let's see, it looks like I have a question. Let me look at that. The question is, my 2 sons are on SSI and I applied for CalFresh for the eldest. I was told to wait for my younger son due to the school EBT card, but it took forever. I missed several months, which is best. So one, these are two completely separate programs, actually. The school EBT, it's called Pandemic EBT. It's completely separate for CalFresh, so you don't need to wait for one to apply for the other. And getting Pandemic EBT does not affect your eligibility for CalFresh. So again, don't wait. You should go ahead and apply for that right away. If you file this application within 90 days, or if this happened within 90 days, you could file an appeal. Sorry, someone knocked at the door, so the dog is going crazy. If this happened within 90 days, then you could file an appeal. If it's been longer than that, you still may be able to file an appeal if there was no notice, but I will say that it's more difficult. I would, one, recommend that you apply right away for your younger son if you haven't already. And two, I would recommend that you file an appeal. And basically the argument you would be making is that you were verbally denied from the program. And I would recommend that you go to your local legal aid. If you're in the Bay Area, you can reach out to us. But if not, whatever your local legal aid is, I would recommend you take it there and see if they're willing, if they're able to help you with the case. And at the end of our PowerPoint, I do have contact information. All right. So any change that voluntary mid-period reports, anything that you're not required to report would be a voluntary report. And you can voluntarily report changes that increase your benefits at any time. Examples of this would be if somebody loses a job, obviously your income goes down. If someone moves in or out of the home, if you have, for instance, your medical expenses or your housing expenses, those go up, you can report that and your grant can go up even in the middle of your certification period. But if the report that you make is either a change in your household composition or a change in your income that would cause a decrease in benefits, the county still has to act on the report as soon as it's verified. If you report something else that would cause your benefits to go down, then nothing would happen. They would wait until your certification period is over, and then your grant would go down at that point in time, and you wouldn't have an overpayment. So for instance, if your medical expenses went down, for instance, you were paying out of pocket, but you learned a lot from Kelsey and applied for Medi-Cal, and now you're not paying for your medical expenses because your Medi-Cal is picking it all up. If you reported that to the county, your grant wouldn't go down. Your CalFresh wouldn't change until the end of your certification period when you had either your STAR 7 or your recertification due. If you reported that you were a household of 2, but your roommate left and now you're only a household of 1, as soon as you verify that, your grant is going to go down. There are certain changes that were made to the program for COVID-19. The biggest one is that people are now getting emergency allotments. So each month during the emergency, CDSS has gotten permission from the federal government who oversees CalFresh in order to give people the maximum amount of benefits for their household size. It's approved on a month-to-month basis, but it's expected to continue throughout the public health emergency. And so far, no one has heard about any changes to that. The way this works is you get a supplement to your regular CalFresh in the middle of the month. So regular CalFresh benefits are paid the 1st through the 8th. You'll get your regular payment. And then each month, it's usually the 2nd or 3rd Sunday. It alternates. The 2nd or 3rd Sunday of the month, a supplement is issued that would get you up to the maximum for your household size. If you're already receiving the maximum benefit for your household size, then you would get $95 for your emergency allotment. There's also a change to overpayments during the pandemic. So because of these emergency allotments, if you were entitled to even $1 of CalFresh during the pandemic, you're not going to have an overpayment. So if changes weren't reported, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, it's really hard to get in contact with counties. That's still true, though not to the same degree. Say you lost your job, you tried to report, but you couldn't. As long as you stay eligible for CalFresh, you won't have an overpayment. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't report, though. If you have changes, if you need to do something, make sure that you're getting a hold of the county and making those reports, because it can still cause a lot of problems for you. And you still will likely have to fight the overpayment that they try to give you. So you want things to be correct, but people shouldn't be overpaid right now. That if you are served an overpayment, it shouldn't be upheld if you challenge it at a hearing. And like I said, there are two new exceptions to student eligibility. So one for work study. Now, as long as you're as long as you're eligible to participate in work study, you qualify for CalFresh under the student exception. This is true even if you don't actually expect to work. So if you're eligible for work study, but your school is completely remote and you're learning from home, you're not doing that job in, financial services or whatever work studies jobs they have. That's okay. In addition, when you do your FAFSA, you get back this report. That report has an expected family contribution. If your expected family contribution is $0, then again, you qualify for CalFresh. And so you would meet an exception to that CalFresh rule. You still have to meet all the other rules of eligibility, but at least you're not ineligible based on being a student. And it's important to note that these exceptions last for the entire certification period. So say you apply today, you're approved, you're certified for 6 months, then say the public health emergency ends 2 weeks from now, you'll still qualify for CalFresh for the rest of your 1 year. You still have to do your STAR 7 at 6 months, but you won't be terminated based on being a college student at that point. And appeals, say you're learning a lot from this presentation and you think that your application was improperly denied, you think that you were terminated when you shouldn't have been, you think your benefits were reduced when they shouldn't have been, then you should file an appeal. If the county is going to take action on your CalFresh, which even includes approving or denying your application, they have to issue a written notice. And that notice should include the action that they're going to take, why they're taking that action, the effective date, your appeal rights, and the regulations they're relying on in making that decision. So the question that came back to me before, where they said you were told to wait to apply before you were told to wait to apply for benefits before until you get that pandemic EBT. We would call that a verbal denial or constructive denial. They should have had a written notice. That written notice would have said you're not eligible because you haven't gotten your pandemic EBT yet. And you would look at that and you would say, that's not a rule for CalFresh. I need to file an appeal. Since they didn't write that notice, you can file an appeal technically at any time. But like I said, it is a little more difficult and I recommend you do it sooner rather than later. Don't wait on that. If you disagree with the action that's on this notice, you have 90 days to request a hearing. You can get aid paid pending, which was similar in the Medi-Cal context. In CalFresh, it works the same way. So if you're already receiving CalFresh and the notice is to either terminate or reduce your benefits, you can request a hearing before the effective date of action and your benefits will continue throughout the hearing. Unlike Medi-Cal, if you ultimately lose your appeal, you will be asked to repay those benefits. So it's something that you need to consider. It may be something that you still want to do, but it's just something that you need to understand. That's not a decision for me to make for any individual. There's no penalty for requesting a hearing. If you request the hearing and it turns out that you learn more and you think you're wrong, you can just withdraw your hearing request. It's much better to request a hearing and withdraw the request than it is to not request and try and get a late hearing. So I say if you have a question, if you're not sure, request that hearing and sort it through later. In order to request a hearing, you can file online at this website here. It's like a really ugly link, but I didn't design it. There's also a phone number here. This is to the state hearing office. You can submit a request through your county welfare department as well, but I will say that some counties are better than others with that. What should happen is the county welfare department receives your hearing request and they're supposed to send it to the state. Sometimes county welfare departments see these hearing requests and they're like, oh, this is like a simple error. I can fix this. And then they just kind of sit on it and maybe your problem doesn't get fixed, your hearing request wasn't submitted to the state, and all of a sudden your time limit has run. No, that's not correct. They should send it. They can still try to work and resolve it even while your hearing is pending. And in fact, they're supposed to do that. So once the state receives your hearing request, they send out a notice that comes pretty automatically. So it should take, give it time for like mailing, I would say. But if you don't hear from the state in a week or two after you've submitted your hearing request to the county, I would go ahead and reach out to the state directly to file that request. And that's all. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take those. If you have a case or you think you need help, if you live in the Bay Area, here's a list of the counties that we serve. Here's our phone number. You can call our legal advice line, and they can talk to you and either give you advice, or depending on what the issue is, it can be set for an appointment with an attorney where we can potentially represent you in an appeal. If you're outside of the Bay Area and you're not sure who your local legal aid is, you can go to lawhelpca.org and they can tell you who your local legal aid is. You should contact them and see if they're able to help you with whatever your appeal is. Are there any other questions? Okay, looks like I'm not getting anything, so I guess pass it back to you, Kamaria.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Yeah, it was very helpful, but thank you guys. I appreciate all your input and your knowledge and your direction for people in the process, because of me being on CalFresh and all the other services. Like, I know how hard it is to navigate those things. So it would have been really helpful back in, like, what was it, 2013 when I had my daughter, to have this webinar. So I from the community looking in and from looking out, I appreciate you all. Let me just get back to my notes. Well, yes, the applications that the ladies were talking about were like CalFresh and Medi-Cal. And we, at One Degree, we have an application that we created called the Common App, which it allows you to save, track, and complete multiple applications for you and your family, such as the ones our panelists have talked about today. And the Common App, it works in 3 different ways. The first way is it can suggest programs that can help you with your current situation or your current needs. It also saves you time by completing one form for multiple programs rather than you having to fill out each individual application alone. So it just kind of consolidates it down for you. And the third kind of helpful reason is it helps you stay organized and keep track of your statuses. So we have within our system, it sends you alerts to let you know, like, hey, you applied for CalFresh. It's been 2 weeks. Have you heard back? And so we kind of like follow up with you to see if you have been able to secure those resources. And we can also advise you and send you links to getting help to try to see your status or kind of move along your application. The Common App is currently available in English and Spanish. And before you begin, make sure you select your language preference. Next slide. The Common App serves all 9 California counties in the San Francisco Bay Area and Los Angeles County. By choosing the county you currently live in, it'll help you find the programs available in your specific area. But if you live outside of your service area, you will not be able to use the Common App, but you still have the opportunity to apply for Medi-Cal and CalFresh separately. But we have a link to where you can navigate to the CalFresh and Medi-Cal website. We will soon be expanding to other California counties and states soon. Once you're there, you will then select the benefits and programs you would like to submit. So you don't necessarily have to apply for all 3. You can just apply for 1 or maybe 2. Before continuing, we would like your permission to ask you certain questions so that we can help you complete your applications. We need to ask you for this information to help you complete and submit your applications. Just FYI, One Degree is HIPAA compliant, so we don't share any unnecessary information to anyone. It's all strictly in our database. But these things are necessary permissions. So if you are willing to create a one degree account, to be able to access the Common App, if we can ask you for information about yourself and the members of your household, it'll also ask you about your income and the income of your household members as well. But that is pretty much it. It's pretty simple when it comes to the Common App. That's our objective. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I just want to take time to once again thank Jessica and Kelsey for sharing this extremely valuable information about Medi-Cal and CalFresh and the incredible resources that the Bay Area Legal Aid provides. If you registered for our event today, we will send you an email with the information that was spoken about today, and any other follow-ups that may come after that, you will receive in the link. We also have live chat support. Just want to explain some things that kind of come with one degree. If you are in need of help after this or need help trying to navigate the resources, we have a live chat. If you're looking for other resources as far as like tax preparation services or low cost or free services, we can help you with that as well. One Degree has live chat support. If you go to the bottom of our page and select the yellow chat One Degree box at the bottom, our representative is able to help you in English and Spanish. The hours for that is between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. Monday through Friday, Pacific Standard Time, and kind of periodically throughout the day before 6 p.m. we check back in to see if we have any responses or not. But you can also email us despite the live chat hours at help@onedegree.org, and we will reply to you as promptly as possible, but within at max 2 business days. If you guys have any other questions that we aren't able to address like immediately, we do have our FAQ section. You can find it at help.onedegree.org. And I think that's about it. Thank you guys.
Thank you.